Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. If everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And at this point in time, I'd like to introduce the members of the Commission that are here this evening. To my far right is Gina Morgenstein, who is a alternate to the Commission. To my immediate right is Jim Fitzsimmons, Commission member. To my far left is Larry Zabrowski, who is an alternate on the Commission. To Larry's right is Armin Menard, who is the Secretary of the Commission. And to my immediate left is J.P. Benoit, who is Vice Chairperson of the Commission. At the staff table is, on the inside position, is Cynthia Kleist, who is our recording secretary, and next to Cynthia is Casey Costello, our town planner. I'm Jim Seichter, the chairperson of the commission. And our next item is approval of our minutes of December 12th. But Casey, I noticed, at least in my packet, I was missing pages 7 through 11. I'm not sure if everybody else had those or not.
Yes, missing. Correct.
So I think that as far as approving these this evening, certainly we won't be able to do it. But I do have, Cynthia, if you could look at a couple items, at least that I had when I was going through the pages that I had. On page 1, we have our first public hearing. It starts off, Secretary Menard read the legal notice, and that it says there was when he was noting the correspondence, it said a memo from James Seichter to the Department of Engineering dated, I know I didn't write any memo. So I think if you would check on that. Then on page 5, I had something, but now I don't. Oh, on page 5, I'm sorry. We're midway through, just before the application can continue to the January 9th meeting. Just above that, it said the public hearing was closed at 7:42. I mean, we did not close the public hearing, so that would need to be deleted. Then on page 13, just above where it's in bold public comment, I think again there where it said continue to January 9th, 2017 P&Z meeting, I think that should just be struck. And then on page 19, underneath, it's number 14, ZBA decisions. You said Ms. Costello noted Rixon 5 was approved for site plan approval. Again, I'm not necessarily sure that that's how it should be wording. And then I think I had just one last thing. And then I think Mr. Menard can probably speak to this, but on the top of page 15, it said Mr. Menard said he would go to 0 for parking. I don't believe that's correct. I believe, and Armin, if you can correct me, but I believe Mr. Menard indicated that he was in agreement with Mr. Fitzsimmons. Which was not to go to 0 for the parking. I don't know if anyone else, if they looked, if they have anything that they just like to bring to Cynthia's attention before. If not, we'll move on to our, actually before I get to our first order of business, there's one application this evening that would not be heard. It's new business. It's a site plan for outdoor dining patio for Rixon 5 at 765 North Colony Road. The applicant has requested that we take no action on this application this evening, and that will then be continued to our meeting for February. Which brings us to our first item of business. It's a continuation of a public hearing. It's a special permit convenience gas station convenience store for Romar Properties at 810 South Colony Road. Again, Mr. Secretary, if you'd note all additional correspondence for the record, if the applicant would begin to prepare for his or her presentation.
We have an interdepartmental referral on January 4th, 2017 from the Fire Marshal. Interdepartment referral received December 23rd, 2016 I don't know who this is, the health department?
Sorry, that's Steve Civitelli. He's a senior, Steve Civitelli, the senior sanitarian.
Okay. We have a letter from Giuliano Associates to Casey Costello, received December 21st, 2016. We have a Buy Unite. It says a traffic study, trip generation study, with no date on it. We have the State of Connecticut Department of Transportation, Christopher Giuliano. To Giuliano from Michael from the Transportation Department. We have another letter from the Transportation Department to Christopher Giuliano, received January 5th, 2017. We have a Department of Engineering to Mr. Sachter, received January 6, 2017. And that is the correspondence, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Menard. Before you get started, just as Mr. Cohen is not going to be here this evening, Mrs. Morgenstein will be sitting in on all the applications this evening for him. With that, if the applicant would please continue with his presentation.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Christopher Giuliano. I'm a licensed land surveyor and professional engineer with the firm of Giuliano Associates. I maintain an office at 405 Water Street in the Yalesville section of town. To my right, your left, is Mr. Robert Cohn, who is the applicant. At last month's meeting, I ran through the plan to upgrade the existing gas station and convenience store. Basically, the upgrade consists of adding 2 new pumps. At that meeting, the commission asked that I make sure that I get everything settled with the town engineer so that all comments were addressed before we returned this evening. Since that time, we have received our DOT approval, as indicated in the file by Secretary Menard, and you do have a letter from the town engineer stating that we have addressed all his comments and concerns. I can run through the plans if the commission desires, or I can just address some questions. It all depends upon what this commission would like.
If you could just quickly, I know you gave us a very thorough presentation last month, but just what changes may have been made. Just hit those high points if you would, please.
Okay. Again, for the record, the property is a triangular shaped, situated between South Colony Street, Route 5, South Main, and then we have South Elm here on the south side. Basically, the property is predominantly paved now. A couple of islands, which are basically both within the town and state right-of-way. Basically, what Mr. Cohn would like to do is, again, add 2 new pumps and increase the size of his canopy slightly. And as a result of working with the town and state, we are decreasing the size of the curb cuts. We are increasing the size of the grass landscaped islands. So currently right now they're bituminous for the most part. We're actually creating a bunch of green space. So we're actually cutting down on the amount of impervious space on the site, making the flow of traffic on site work a little bit better. And as requested by the town engineer, we're even adding some underground galleys to control the runoff from both the roof of the building and the roof of the canopy. So we're kind of hitting this property with 3 distinct improvements of green space, improved traffic flow, and we're actually taking care of some drainage concerns that the town engineer had. It is pretty straightforward. I believe the town engineer has indicated that even with the 2 additional pumps, we're not going to be increasing traffic along Route 5 since this really isn't a destination spot. It's more that people who use the gas station are driving by and realize they need gas. So there is going to be no real impact to the traffic on Route 5 and most likely on South Main and South Elm.
Good. Thank you. Commission members with any additional questions for the applicant? Mr. Simmons.
Just one comment. This is a special permit application, correct? So I just want to make sure to remind the applicant and their representative, the green space cannot be used to display products. In the past, we've had gas stations on 5 that all of a sudden start selling mulch in season or Christmas trees or things. The grass is landscaping, it's not a additional sales site. Agreed?
Understood and
Understood,
agreed.
okay. And the other question was regarding signage. Is the plan to maintain the current sign and just put a fresh new sign up for Sunoco? No new height or anything? Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimmons. Other commission members? Mr. Zarate.
Yeah, I have one thing about, it's pretty congested as far as the traffic pattern goes. Are there gonna be arrows on the pavement showing, the direction of traffic?
Yes, we do have traffic markings, and if there's any additional traffic markings that are.
Does it show on the drawing there, though?
Yeah, we do have our directional arrows in and out in our one-way area back as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before I go out to the public, Casey, any comments that you may have? I know looking at the memo that you had sent to us, or your comments, you indicated that all of your comments have been addressed, and the same thing with Rob Baltramitis is our town engineer. He looked at the traffic information that was provided and felt that there wouldn't really be a significant increase in traffic, that the additional people using it would be more of pass-through traffic. Is that correct?
Yes. So I'm satisfied. It appears the town engineer is generally satisfied, and generally the other departments were as well. I just request one condition of approval, which is an S&E bond to be determined upon submission of final plans.
Okay, good.
And then there are conditions of the fire marshal's office and 12/28/16 and water and sewer 11/30/16.
Good. Thank you. This is a public hearing. Any members of the public like to speak on the application, please come forward, name and address and your comments. Seeing none, I guess I'll bring it back to the applicant for any final questions that you may have or comments. You certainly don't feel compelled to make any.
No final questions?
Any final questions from any commission members? That being said, I'd entertain a motion to close our public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to close the public hearing for special permit gas station convenience store Romar Properties, 810 South Colony Road, application 414-16.
We have a motion to close the public hearing. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. Voting beginning with Mrs. Morgenstein, please.
Yes.
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 And yes. At this point in time, our public hearing is closed, so I'll entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve a special permit gas station convenience store for Romar to increase the number of fuel stations from 4 to 8 and make associated site modifications at an existing gas station convenience store at 810 South Colony Road, as shown on plans entitled Land of Romar Properties, LLC, 810 South Colony Road, Wallingford, Connecticut, dated September 28, 2016, updated to December 20, 2016, subject to approval, sign off from Connecticut DOT. Green space cannot be used as a sale site. S&E to be determined on the submission of final plans. And Casey, what were the other ones?
Water and sewer comments dated November 30th, 2016, and fire marshal comments dated December 28th, 2016.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you. We have a motion on the application. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. Voting beginning with Mrs. Morgenstein, please.
Yes.
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 Yes, the application has been approved. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Our next item is a special permit addition and associated alterations to a car dealership for Jay Blickfield, Quality Subaru at 711 North Colony Road. Again, Mr. Menard, this is a continuation of a public hearing. If you'd please note all additional correspondence for the record.
We have a letter from KC to Joseph Blickfeld, December 30th, 2016. We have a interdepartmental referral from the fire marshal dated January 9, 2017. We have a interdepartmental referral from the chief sanitarian, January 9, 2017. We have a letter from Giuliano Associates, January 3rd, 2017 to Casey Costello. We have a Town of Wallingford Engineering memorandum to James Sector from the Town Engineering Department, January 9, 2017. We have a project info received December 16, 2016. And that is the correspondence, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Menard. Again, if the applicant and/or his representative please introduce himself and begin your presentation.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Christopher Giuliano, licensed land surveyor and professional engineer with the firm of Giuliano Associates. To my right, your left, is Mr. Joseph Blickfeld, the owner and applicant, and to my far right, your far left, is Mr. Gary Turney, who is the project architect. I'm going to go up and run through the plan since we didn't have an opportunity to do that last time and explain the project. What is being proposed is an expansion to the existing Quality Subaru site at 711 North Colony Road, Connecticut Route 5. I believe you're all familiar with it. But basically we have the existing facility that was approved in 1997 and the existing bank property which is currently under a lease for the balance of the subject parcel. What Mr. Blickfeld would like to do is to expand the facility as required by Subaru. As this commission is aware, every so many years the car dealerships upgrade their look, upgrade their facilities and ask each dealership to do so. And in order to maintain the number of cars and their status, they are almost forced to move forward with these upgrades. So basically what we currently have is our front landscaping portion of it is in the state right-of-way. We have 25 feet, which was approved back in 1997. Our perimeter landscaping and a larger wooded area, which also houses a detention basin. Basically, what we are planning to do is to provide the needed landscaping or required landscaping in accordance with the RF40 zone. So we'll be expanding our front yard landscaping by 25 feet all across the front of the site. Obviously, once the bank lease is up, this portion of the front landscaping will be installed. But I wanted to show you what the site would look like at the end. Since we are conforming with the RF40 zone with respect to front yard landscaping, we will be removing the landscape area in the back right corner. Since it is a detention area, we will be replacing that with underground galleys so that we have the volume if and should it be needed, but we'll actually be able to park on it, so we'll actually have some usable space and we will not lose any parking. The interesting thing about this project, as this commission knows, the property to the south was just recently approved for a medical office building. Their parking also complies with the RF40 zone, so we had to make a slight adjustment with respect to the access easement through the property, so we are lined up with their improvements. My office is actually doing the stakeout work for that company, so we were able to get the plans from Malone and McBroom and make sure our improvements coordinate with theirs so that there are no problems. I did notice that the town engineer commented today that he'd like to see this access easement be pushed through to the north. I don't see that necessarily as a problem. He did indicate something about car dealership, but this property to the north is actually a Wendy's. Will it always stay a Wendy's? I don't know, but I don't have a particular problem, and I don't think the owner does either, especially considering once phase 2 is done, we'll have a straight shot through these properties. In your packet, you'll also notice that we provided a separate parking layout color plan. I believe it is also color in your packet, which we've basically gone through and designated which cars are for customer parking, which cars are for display, vehicle bay parking, and employee parking. And we distinguished between phase 1 and phase 2 so that the commission could see exactly what the site will look like while the bank lease is still in place, and then what will happen once the bank is removed, which I believe that time frame is 3 to 5 years, if I'm correct. With respect to grading and utilities, there's not much change to the utilities overall. Since it is an existing facility, we have to make some slight adjustment to the sanitary sewer oil water separator and catch basin over at the southeast corner. Really, the most significant change is the update of or removal of the detention basin and installation of some underground galleys as depicted on the plan. Site is pretty well flat, so there isn't any real grades, earth movement involved. Pretty straightforward overall. Other than that, I will turn it back to, I'm sorry. Come up and talk about the architectural so the commission can see what this is going to look like, and then I'll turn it over to the commission.
Good evening. My name is Gary Tierney. I'm an architect practicing in Guilford. As Chris indicated, there were two things that really drove the expansion of the facility. One is the need for just better facilities on the part of the dealership itself. If anybody has been in there, they're familiar with the fact that there's a very small customer lounge area. Showroom and offices are up towards the front of the building. There are 7 existing service bays and an outdoor covered area but not enclosed that's used for new car delivery and that sort of thing. So the goal was to expand service, expand sales, dramatically expand the customer lounge waiting area and provide a better scenario for new car pickup and that sort of thing. And at the same time, as Chris indicated, all of the car manufacturers are requiring that dealerships move to the next generation of dealership design. So what we've done is retain the existing parts storage area and, 8 existing bays in this area. We've created 7 new service bays on the north side of the building, which are accessed directly from the outside. 2 bays that are used for cleanup of cars, either when they're finished being serviced or are being prepared to be picked up by customers. Service drive-in and drop-off is now an interior situation. The cars are able to drive in. They're met by a service advisor. There's a service advisor and service manager's area. And then the cars either get taken directly outside and parked until they're ready to be worked on, or they come into an express area where short-term problems, quick problems can be dealt with. Customers move into an interior area where there's a TV lounge with a children's play area that's in the form of a lighthouse, or a quiet lounge for those folks who want to get away from the TV, a Wi-Fi area, a cafe as opposed to just a counter along the wall, an expanded sales area, showroom, and in order to expand these functions, we've moved most of the offices that existed on the ground floor up to a 2nd story on the south side of the building. As you can see, the flow is considerably better. In the existing situation, we have folks trying to get into service, new cars trying to be delivered out, all from the same location. So the flow has been dramatically increased. From the street side, the showroom now is about half glass and half ACM panels, the typical aluminum metal panels that most of the car dealers are using. Subaru's signature tile-clad tower. The service drop-offs are off to the side, and then around the corner is the drop-off for the car cleanup and an exit point for new car delivery. And then we have an area, as I said, on the south side, the new 2-story addition that was created that has a conference room and some offices on the ground floor and the business offices up on the 2nd floor. before and afters. This is the building as it currently looks when you pull in from the street access. An after shot of what the building will look like. Another shot from the front, shot from the southeast corner with the new increased showroom and the service drop-off off to the side. This is the current covered but not enclosed service drop-off new car pickup that's now an enclosed facility. And I think that pretty much covers it. The materials on the outside are glass, ACM panels for the primary portion of the showroom. As we said, the signature Subaru Tower, and then ephes or stucco in 2 colors on the northeast corner and the southwest corner where the offices are. Any questions?
Thank you.
Before we turn this over to the commission for questions and comments, I was remiss in actually bringing this up. One of the things that we would like to request of the commission, since we are kind of a unique facility on Route 5, and as most of the commission knows, there aren't too many car dealerships up and down Route 5 that have this kind of front yard landscaping. Since we are so far set back, we would like to make the request of the commission to be able to designate 2 pads, one on each side, and these pads would be done in grass pavers, so they would remain as landscaping and be green. But the reason why we'd like to request them is so that we could actually display a car or 2 on each pad, since we are so far set back. And I just wanted to bring that to the commission's attention now, so if there were any questions about that, we could discuss it before the close of the public hearing.
Good. Thank you. At this point in time, questions from commission members? Ms. Fitzsimmons.
Thank you. You ended on the landscaping, and that's where I'd like to start, because I would acknowledge what you said. I mean, this is a unique site, so it's a revision of what's currently there, which is one of the few auto dealers on Route 5 with appropriate landscaping, including the trees. Could you address the tree issue for me? Because we received a copy of a letter from your office regarding your interpretation regarding the perimeter trees. And if I read the letter correctly, it said, in order to achieve the 30 required perimeter trees, the proposed plan shows 26 trees in 2 rows along the frontage, with 4 trees placed along the southern property line to comprise the required 30. So,
What we did...
Trying to figure that out.
Okay. What we have on the site is along our northerly and westerly boundaries, we have an electric easement that runs down the north side and along the west side. So the Wendy's property line and the Amtrak behind us. I'm not certain that the electric division is going to want us to be planting trees every 50 feet or so within their easement. So my office decided that we would take those perimeter trees and we'd put them in the front. We have to have the trees regardless. At least if we put them somewhere, we have that 75 feet, we have the room to do it. On the south side with the facility that's going in, right along the edge, they're putting in a 5-foot landscape, so between them, the space they have and the space we have, we can fit a couple trees in there and they'd be viable. Obviously putting some trees in the island just to the south of the building, probably not the best. We've tried to keep them into the landscaped aisles, but that's what we were referring to with respect to putting all the perimeter trees, or the majority of those perimeter trees, in the front, because we weren't sure if we could plant them on the north and west side. I had a conversation with Ms. Costello just prior to the meeting, and she and I would work that out, and we would talk to the electric division in case they were okay with running within their easement and planting some trees there. But I wanted to at least have a fallback plan in case we couldn't put them there. So that's why we placed the trees where we placed the trees.
And then the other note, the next paragraph in your letter refers to the sidewalk as being able to meet the landscaping requirement.
Within our regulations, a building is supposed to have a 5-foot front landscaping area or a sidewalk. So we have a sidewalk that's 9 feet, about 9.5 feet off the front of the building. We do have that small island to the right which separates the customer and handicap spot from the garage entry for the customer pickup and drop off. And then obviously we have that little larger island on the southeast corner that runs along the south portion of the property. So half of our building is really garage doors or bays, so you really can't have anything there. So, and we needed an entry. So instead of having a little 4-foot section of grass or 5-foot section, we went with the sidewalk because it's more practical.
The last question for you again, in the landscaping area, is your request for two pads to be able to display a vehicle.
That's correct.
On one on each side.
Correct.
With concrete paver, so
Yep.
when grass.
I'd like to use grass paver. It's a material that we've used for
Familiar with it, yep.
fire lanes and other places. That way it looks like grass. We'll just mark it out, the edge it, so that we know, so we know where it is. We'll have an area that we can get to it. But this way, it looks like grass, it looks like landscaping. It just allows Mr. Blickfeld to be able to display vehicles a little bit closer to the road so that people, actually know that there's a dealership there, because we are so far set back and we are going to have a lot of landscaping in the front. So unlike some dealers that are literally right on the state highway. So
they'd be south of the trees, correct? I mean, they'd be behind the trees. Yeah.
They would be east. We'd bring
East of
them
the
east
trees.
of the trees.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. And just one on each side is your request?
Yes.
Okay.
They would be no further forward than where we're presently parking now. But the rest of us is gonna move back 25 feet.
Yep. Okay. All right. And I just have, through you, Mr. Chairman, a question to the town planner. The building that was approved, the old Everybody's, the new orthopedic group, where is their landscaping gonna match up to this? If we had their plan right next to it, how much landscaping are they having in the front? I forgot.
Where the bank is?
No, where the orthopedic group is going.
Oh, it's also 50 feet of landscaping.
So it's gonna match.
exactly
So
lined
it'd be a
up.
nice
Yes.
lawn section.
Actually,
Oh, yeah.
the regulation is doing what it's
Right,
supposed to.
yeah, so it's contiguous, and they're putting a sidewalk in too, correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzsimmons. Other commission members with questions? Yes, Mrs. Morgenstein.
Mine's more just a comment. So I was actually kind of excited when I saw that the bank had some open space with your underground systems in it at the back. And then I went, oh, it's lost because you've now got this front requirement. Can you just comment how many parking spaces you would have had, not to the left, but to the right? So on the bank side, if we didn't have our current 50-foot requirement, how many parking spaces, amount of space is that versus how much you're taking away at the back behind the current property?
Okay. If I understand you correctly, you're asking if when we came in last month, we were trying to stick with the 25 feet we had and not give the full landscaping. So I believe in that plan, we had roughly about 141 total spaces on site, keeping that back corner as it was and keeping the front landscaping as it was. This plan is very similar. So this plan actually flows better on site. So although it's a trade-off and we remove that landscaping in the back, I think we have an overall better plan, about the same number of vehicle spaces on site between the two plans. So we're right around 140 spaces in total between both plans. It's just circulation here is so much better. And we're able to make it work and everything fit nicely with this instead of trying to make it fit around that odd landscaped area in the back.
And Casey, are we comfortable with the trees at this point?
Well, I think one of my comments to the commission would be that two things. This is a special permit, so you do have some discretion. In terms of the sidewalk in place of the 5-foot landscaping, that's something you can choose to allow. You don't have to allow it. I don't have any objection to it though. I think that's consistent with what you've approved in the past. In terms of the trees, what I would recommend is a condition of approval that the applicant discuss the potential of putting the perimeter trees in the perimeter with the electric division, and that they only be placed in the front if they're not permitted by the electric division. That's what we had talked about. And then in terms of the last, since we're on it, with landscaping, there were a couple of other little things that I think I can work out with Mr. Giuliano. But there is the question of having a tree in every landscaped island. That is what the reg requires. So I think that can be accomplished. Is that?
Yes, I mean, we had explained why we didn't do it in those 3 spots for you. It was in the letter that Mr. DeMayo from my office sent to you, detailed out.
I don't have the discretion to waive the zoning regulations, so
Understood.
and neither does the commission. So
Okay, well, we'll make it work then. If
And
there has to be.
which are the 3 islands without the trees?
The first island is this island right here, just to the northeast of the building. Mr. Blickfeld currently has an island that has a flagpole in it, so we're removing the flagpole out of the current island, putting it in this island, and flagpole in the tree. We're kind of keeping them separate. And as we told Ms. Costello, worst comes to worst, we could move the flagpole to the front of the island, put the tree on the back side of the island. We could make it work. It's just not going to work similar to what he has now. But we'll make it work. The second island is this one right here in the front, and the regulations state that the island has to be 8 feet wide for landscape for trees. This island here is only 5 feet. So that's why we believe it really doesn't pertain to this particular island. But if we had to put a tree in there, we'll put a tree in there. The third island is this little area right in here. We have some drainage, existing drainage, and the drainage has some very shallow piping. So we're afraid that the tree might interfere with the existing drainage that's there. Again, if we have to kind of fit a tree in the island, I'll be glad to put one in there, but I was trying to think practically in this respect. And if you consider this as all one landscape island, we do have a tree in the back, so I guess we kind of do satisfy the requirement, but I'd be, if the commission really wants a landscape tree or a tree in this portion of landscaped island, we'll make it work one way or another.
and you can exclude it from the smaller island if that's not used towards your minimum requirement.
But again, Casey, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not so much that whether the commission requires it or not, our regulations would require that. So I think, as you know, either you can choose to depict it on there, or you could go to the ZBA and request the variance, because we wouldn't be able to give that to you.
We'll put the trees in the islands.
Yeah, just so we're clear on that, yeah.
We'll take care of it.
If you chose that option to go with the ZBA, but again, I think as our town planner said, we don't have the authority to do that.
Understood, but we'll put a tree in there so we don't have to go to ZBA. So I'll make it as a condition of approval to put the 3 trees where they belong.
Again, that's your option.
Okay.
Other commission members before I go out to the public? Yes, Ms. Menard.
I see no problems with the parking in the front, a couple of cars, because of the other dealerships down the road. They're right on the street, so I think it should be predicated on if the state comes in and widens it and uses their footage in the front, then they would have to eliminate it.
Okay, and again, Mr. Giuliano, if you just for my benefit, probably other commission members too, if you just point out where you'd like to have those 2 spots.
As Mr. Blickfeld explained, we'd be looking to put a small area on this side, again, 25 feet off the property line, and then probably one over on this side, similar in size, again, 25 feet.
So it's west of the trees?
Well, we'll move the trees behind them, or we'll work that out, exactly. But I didn't want to show something on the plan yet until we did work out the landscaping and until I broached it with this commission. And if, as Mr. Menard stated, if the state did come in and widen, then we would, I don't think that's a problem where we'd have to lose that if they took any more their right away. But it really wouldn't impact the location, but if that's a condition, I think we could live with that.
But again, it's going to be, because when you had mentioned initially it's going to be east of the trees, I was looking at your plan and thinking it's going to be east of the sidewalk, but
No.
it's not. It's going to be west of the sidewalk,
It's-
correct?
Yeah, it's gonna be west of the
All right.
sidewalk.
No, that's
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah, these trees here are existing, they're gonna all be moved and rearranged anyway, so we'll make it all work as to how it all fits.
No, again, initially when you said east of the trees, looking at the plan, I thought you were talking about east of the sidewalk also, which
That
you're
would-
not.
That would be in the state right away,
Yeah,
that would not.
which you're not.
That would not
I
work.
understand.
They won't be any further forward than we're presently parking today.
Okay. Good. Other Commissioner, Casey, any comments before we go out to the public?
Yes. First, just a reminder that you will need to decide in regard to the town engineer's comments about the connection to the property to the north. The other comment I have, or another comment that I have, is just the elevations and the conversation tonight referenced a two-story building, but the plans refer to it as a one-story building. I presume that it's two, is that correct? Or partly two?
Yeah, you're saying my plans call it a one-story, then no, that's an error on our part. It is a two-story as per the architectural. So.
Okay, that's fine.
The building height is correct, though.
Yeah, okay. And then the last comment that I have is in regard to that front landscaping area. The parking of the vehicle in your front landscaping area is news to me and something that I don't think is consistent with your zoning regulation. The regulation calls for a front landscaped area with grass, not parking or vehicle storage. I don't think that's consistent with the intent or the letter of the regulation. I understand other dealerships that pre-exist are able to park their vehicles closer, but we are constantly trying to enforce the grassed area with other dealerships on Route 5 and enforce that they are not allowed to park on their grassed areas. So I think that if we're going to allow that, that needs a significant change in the regulation. And it, sort of along those lines, I was even going to ask if it was really necessary to have light posts in that front landscaped area, because I'm not really sure why those need to be there. And I do think that if we're going to have light poles there, we should have an actual lighting plan to ensure that there's not light trespass onto Route 5.
Thank you. I guess the applicant would like to just address those comments.
Okay. Well, there currently are light poles in the front landscaping now. So we're just be taking the existing poles, I believe, and pushing them back along with the parking. So I don't think that necessarily is a problem. Again, we are going to be 50 feet away from the property line. We do need the lighting, obviously, for security at night. So it would be consistent with what's there now. We can definitely design the light so that there is no light trespass. I don't think that's a problem. With respect to providing a small parking area or pad, again, done in grass pavers in the front landscaping, if the town planner is not in favor of it, I understand strict interpretation of regulations. I was asking this commission because of the uniqueness of what we have here as compared to almost every dealership up and down Route 5. But again, I'll defer to the town planner and this commission.
Okay, thank you.
Just to clarify on the light poles, sorry. I understand why you want light poles by the parking lot, but then there's another row closer to the road. Like there are 2 rows of light posts shown in the front.
Okay, the one closer to the road.
The closer one's getting removed.
Getting removed. Those are the
Got it.
existing
Thank
ones.
you. Okay,
All set?
good with that, yeah.
All right, this is a public hearing. Any members of the commission would like to speak on the application, please come forward, name and address with your comments. Yes, gentleman in the back.
Good evening, John Walworth, 28 Laurelwood Drive. I'd like to speak in favor of this application. The applicant is very fastidious in not only the implementation but the maintenance of his property. He markets a great product. It's unfortunate there isn't a way for he to display a few cars in front, but I I think it's one of the finer properties. You'll never have to warn this property owner that he has trash or unmowed grass in this property. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members of the public like to speak on the application? Seeing none, I'll bring it back first to the applicant if you'd like to make, again, any final comments.
I think we're all set.
I would.
Sure.
I know he's gonna fall off his chair. Number one, part of the reason why we're doing this is because the manufacturers recommend it, or not recommend it, demand it. But the other part is I want to make it look nicer. If you've looked at anything I've ever built, this is now at the low end. And it needs upgrading. That's the first thing. The second thing is, as far as landscaping goes, there's planting landscaping and there's maintaining landscaping. And I've seen a lot of dead trees, and I've seen a lot of dead bushes. Do you know who planted every piece of landscaping out there except for the trees? Me, personally. And I don't mind picking up the papers, and I don't mind trimming the bushes. And I do it there and other places. So we're trying to set the example. But if you crush us and we can't become competitive, it just, nothing works. We're trying to provide jobs, and we are. And I think we represent Wallingford as well as we can. And I realize that everyone has a job to do. But I would also say, when we tell people not to park on the lawn, I don't know anyone else who has a lawn. I went up and down the strip. I mean, I don't know, maybe there is one I didn't see. But we sprinkle the lawn, we mow the lawn, and we maintain the lawn, just like we do the trees. So I'd just like you to keep that in consideration if you possibly could. We're not going to go forward at all. We're only going to, we're pulling back 25 feet. And for a car dealership, that's like death. I mean, that's why people drive down the road to look at cars. So if you could look at that in some way to help us, we would really appreciate it.
Thank you. Any commission members' questions before we, or further comments before we at least close the public hearing? Casey, anything final from you?
No, just I would request a condition of approval that an S&E bond to be determined upon submittal of final plans. And then you did also have comments from the fire marshal dated 11/21/16 and from water and sewer dated November 30th, 2016, and from engineering dated January 9th, 2017. And then we just need to work with the applicant on the final details of the landscaping.
Okay, good. At this point in time, Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, before we go to a motion to close.
Well, close the public hearing. We could have discussion among the commission members.
Sure.
So at this point in time, I'd just entertain a motion to close our public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing, special permit application, addition and associated altercations to car dealership J. Wickfeld, application 416-16.
We have a motion to close our public hearing. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons, voting beginning with Mrs. Morgenstein.
Yes.
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 And yes. And at this point in time, I guess I'd entertain any discussion on the application by commission members. Please, Mr. Fitzsimmons, you had.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I guess I would just want to be on record. I'm in favor of the applicant showing on the final plans the interconnection to the parcel to the north. Because I'm pleased to see the transition of this property and the property next door that, with the removal of the bank, it makes sense. Wendy's might not be there forever, so interconnection is a good thing on Route 5. Regarding the applicant's request for the vehicle display, I will say, for the record, I think this is one of the finest looking car dealerships on Route 5. And I, over the years, I drive Route 5 every day. And I think it's, I was fine with your request until I heard from the town planner. And I still am. And so I don't know if it's appropriate because it is a special permit application, if the final plans could show the 2 vehicle display area, because there would be significant control over what we have. And I don't disagree with the town planner. We have worked very hard on these regulations over the year. I mean, the fact that we have trees and sidewalks on Route 5 is a significant change over the years. I will say, you know, so I'm just one voice up here, but I do like the idea of outlining on the map, making sure that it only is the 2 spots with the pavers as proposed, but I'm wrestling with the idea because it's the challenge of the regulation. But because it's a special permit, I would be in favor of the applicant's request to do it for this time with a depiction of the plan.
Other commission members?
Just kind of a question along those lines. How would you get to if you did it, how would you get to them?
Basically, we'd make an area of grass pavers, so we'd own.
Our public hearing's been closed.
Okay. I was just asking more questions, so I guess.
The way they do it today. I mean, I certainly can say on the record, through the town planner, this has happened before, where there have been vehicles in the spring when people are car shopping. I've noticed vehicles on the grass here. When zoning enforcement is an issue, everyone gets the letter. This is, you know, I have witnessed it here before at others. So the fact that they're requesting it to avoid a violation makes sense.
No, but that's okay.
Anyone else?
So,
Mrs. Morgenstein.
so the fear at this point is that if they have 2 vehicles on the grass, everyone in the world will think you can put 2 vehicles on the grass moving forward, because people aren't going to recognize the difference between a grass paver and a grass strip. But do any other dealerships at this point even have grass, or they're all concrete?
Oh, sure.
Oh, no, there's grass.
Monster trucks.
Monster trucks. I agree with Jim, though. I think we've asked them to give up an awful lot. I'd love to have a little of that open space behind the soon-to-be not existing building. That's me. But 50 feet is a long way.
Are you looking for a comment from me?
I think so.
I think so.
Okay. To keep it technical, since the public hearing is closed, your regulation says 50 feet of landscaping. There is the option to the applicant of applying for a variance to allow for a limited number of display vehicles in the front landscaped area, which maybe this commission, in issuing their report, if a variance were applied for in issuing their report, wouldn't object to such a variance. But from a regulatory standpoint, it seems to me that that is the more appropriate option. I don't see gray area in the regulation, and I don't think we want to create any. But obviously, you're the commission, it's your call.
Thank you. Anyone else? I guess I'll just, again, yes, Mrs. Morgenstein.
I think Frenchie had a
Oh,
comment.
Mr. Menard, I'm sorry.
I think it's a shame to make them go in front of the ZBA. I do, but get it that way, so why should we force them to do that? I go along with Jimmy. I think Jim is right, and I think we should give it to him.
Thank you. I guess I'll just state my opinion. I certainly concur with everything that Mr. Fitzsimmons has said about the applicant as far as the dealership, how it's maintained, and certainly how it compares to other dealerships within town. However, I'm listening to our town planner, and certainly, her opinion is that this is what the regulations comply for the landscaping. And much like when we were talking about, varying certain things before, saying we don't have the ability to vary our regulations. And I think clearly what the town planner is saying that, in her opinion, that in fact what you're requesting is not allowed under the regulations and would require a variance. From my perspective, I would certainly support a variance, but I would be concerned that if we make an exception here and essentially vary our regulations, which in my mind I don't believe we have the authority to do, then we're setting a precedent for other dealerships who do have grass, some grass area, and allowing them to, park cars there. So, from my perspective, as much as I'd like to say I'd like to give that to you, I just feel it sets a very bad precedent on our part when we start varying our regulations when, in my mind, we don't have the ability to do that. So, that being said, yes?
Just one more item of information. There is also, and I'm not sure that this helps or not here, but there is also written into your front landscaping regulation the provision that the commission, at the request of the applicant, can reduce or modify, the applicant can propose to modify part of the front landscaping if they basically double what they're taking away somewhere else in the front yard. So again, I'm not sure that that helps them here, but I think it speaks to that there is an attempt to make some provision for some flexibility. I'm just not sure that it gets them there, but I just wanted to state it on the record so as that is another option that's available in the regulations.
Okay. Again, at this point in time, if there's no other comments by commission members, I'd look to entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve a special permit vehicle dealer and repairer for Lickfeld to construct an addition to the building and associated site changes at 711 North County Road, as shown on plans entitled Quality Subaru Proposed Site Improvement Plan, 711 North County Road, Connecticut Route 5. Wallingford, Connecticut, dated November 1st, 2016, updated to January 3rd, 2017, subject to approval sign-off from Connecticut DOT. The final plans be modified to provide compliant landscaping plantings based on discussion with Electric Division and Town Planner. S&E bond to be determined at submission of plans and final submission of plans. Address town engineer's comments in memo dated January 9, 2017. Address comments fire marshal dated December 19, 2016. Ms. Sutton.
No, just a point of clarification. In addressing the town engineer's comments, does that include providing the interconnection to the property to the north?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second on the motion?
Second.
Do we have any discussion on the motion? At this point in time, I then entertain voting on the motion, beginning with Mrs. Morgenstein.
Yes.
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 And yes, application's been approved. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Brings us up to our next item. It's a continuation of a public hearing for a zoning text amendment for J. Richello, Section 4.25, Housing Opportunity District General. Again, Mr. Menard, if you'd please note all additional correspondence for the record.
Is this number 3?
Yes, it is.
Okay. I have 3 proposed amendment regulations here, and they're all the same. I don't
Well, there's
know.
a red line, French.
Yeah, well, there's B and C also.
Yeah, there's 2 Bs. This B isn't complete.
Okay.
This page is missing,
Okay,
so it's that.
alrighty. Well, there's, like I said, there's B and there's also C.
Yeah, well, no, there's, B is the red line copy, C is the, is the non-red line copy. Or whatever. Do we have a lawyer here?
There's a Census of the Government,
Thank you.
Chapter 3, Transportation, on January 5, 2017. There is a letter from Millstone and McBroom to Matthew Green, Esquire, no date. And there's a list, parking requirements. And that is the correspondence, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Bernard. If the applicant would please introduce himself and continue with his presentation from last month.
Good evening. For the record, Christopher Giuliano, licensed land surveyor and professional engineer with the firm of Giuliano Associates. To my right, your left, is the applicant, Mr. Riccello. At last month's meeting, we had gone through the regulation and kind of gone through point by point on the proposed zoning text amendment to create a housing opportunity district general with a subsection for age restricted. There were 2 points of that discussion that were kind of left to be resolved. The first was the age of the residents. There was some discussion on how that age, if there was going to be either 62 with someone being able to live there younger or 55. Basically, myself and the town planner, we've agreed that it will be a straight flat 62. So you have to be 62 years of age to live in the facility. The second part of the discussion that was left open was the number of parking spots per dwelling unit. We had originally proposed 1.25, and I had provided this commission some background data from all the various towns within the state of Connecticut. There was a feeling from the town engineer, and I believe even Ms. Costello had a feeling that 1.5 would be more appropriate, and based on those discussions, we'll agree to the 1.5 as well. And I understand Ms. Costello provided some additional information that kind of leans towards the 1.25, but it's not a large jump. We're able to accommodate, so I think if we keep it at the 1.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit, it ensures that we have enough extra parking in the facility as we move forward. So we can make that work with our site plan, which you'll probably see next month. So we're fine with respect to the parking request as well. And I think that takes care of everything that was outstanding in the regulation.
Good, I do too, but Casey, any comments before I ask commission members for comments?
No, just briefly, well, I would agree with Mr. Giuliano, the information that I found, first in terms of the age, the statute, and I did talk about this with Attorney Small also to confirm, the statute for age restriction under fair housing essentially allows either a restriction that the head of household has to be 55 and other members can be any age, or that everyone in the development has to be 62 or over. So I think we're all on the same page that the 62 or over seems to work for everyone. In terms of the parking requirements, I did a lot of digging to try to find additional information because there are so many contributing factors to the parking requirements in this situation, but all of the information that I came out with and the information I provided you with is based on, I reached out to the planners listserv that I belong to see what other towns require, the towns that do restrict or do have different requirements for age restricted housing. And those were the answers I got back. And in the other research I did, the 1.5 seems to be more than sufficient. The other two things I would mention is there are two modifications that need to be made. One is on, let me just see here. One is section E2, E3. It references the HODG unit shall be offered for sale/lease, but it's referring only to individually owned units, so it should just say for sale, so the word lease should come out there. And the other one was a similar item on page 2.
4.25A, Casey.
Thank you. It discusses, or the purpose references development of affordable rental housing. The intention of this regulation is to anticipate both rental and ownership affordable housing. So again, the word rental should be removed. And then finally, there was a comment from the town engineer regarding, there were a couple of comments, but which I did incorporate. The one that I did not incorporate, because I think there's some difference of opinions about that, is the recommendation that the word existing be added into the buildable area definition in terms of determining the maximum number of units. So the maximum number of units is based on the buildable area. The buildable area sort of accounts for or subtracts out wetlands, floodplain, steep slopes, things of that nature. And the town engineer is proposing that the term existing be added so that it would essentially be whatever the site is at the time of application, so that as part of a development application for under an HODG development, someone couldn't propose to say fill or regrade in order to create additional buildable area. I think that and I'll let the applicant sort of express his position on it, but I think that generally I think the town engineer's position also partly comes from, if you look at your OSPRD regulation, that defines buildable area, and we haven't really, it doesn't say existing or proposed, and essentially it depends on whether or not there are changes being made. So typically with an OSPRD, you're not seeing a lot of significant regrading in the open space and things like that to create additional buildable area. In some of these HOD developments, you're probably more likely to see it because they're probably smaller pieces of property. Your OSPRDs are very, very large pieces. So I think that really the underlying concern is perhaps a concern about filling in floodplain and things of that nature. The issue is that there's nothing, your regulations do not currently, your floodplain regulations don't prevent filling in the floodplain. So someone could come in for a floodplain permit to fill ahead of time, and then they would have changed their existing condition, and then they would come in. That would make it a two-step process. So if you add in the word existing, it would turn it into that process, but I just want to make sure everyone understands that, or if everyone's on the same page, that wouldn't prevent it from happening. It may direct us in another direction, which is about having a conversation about the floodplain regulations and allowing filling in the floodplain. Our current regulations are the FEMA suggested, or sort of FEMA dictated regulations. We can be stricter than those regulations. We can't be looser, but we can be stricter. So far, we have always used the recommended regulations from FEMA. But if that's a conversation that needs to, it might be a conversation worth having. I'm not sure that we get there here. But on the other hand, I will say Mr. Baltramitis isn't here, and I know that his position was that he does stand by his comment.
Thank you. I guess if the applicant would like to comment on that.
Okay. I received Mr. Baltramitis' comments, and I did talk to Ms. Costello about this. And my main objection is that we don't use the word existing in any other part of the regulations with respect to OSPRDs, open space subdivisions, or any other HODs. So it would be making this language more restrictive than any other regulation. And again, as I explained to both the town engineer and Ms. Costello, and Ms. Costello kind of relayed, it doesn't stop any applicant from coming in and getting a fill and excavation permit. It just does add that extra step. So I think the checks and balances here is if someone were to go try to fill in wetlands, they have the Wetlands Commission that they have to get through first. If they want to do fill in floodplain, we have to go through FEMA and that process, and obviously this commission as well. But when it comes to steep slopes, there's nothing that stops an applicant from regrading steep slopes on almost any project. So if they need to make a site usable, they can come in and regrade. I just think the word existing isn't necessary there. Because it is more restrictive, it doesn't follow what the other, other sections of the regulations are, and it wasn't really what we had proposed in the first place. So we'd like to see that word remain out. Otherwise, it does end up being a two-step process going forward. Because I think in 99% of the cases, we will be using smaller sites that need a little bit of work. So we approach it in that respect, but we'll leave it up to the commission on however you deem possible, most best for the application and best for the town.
Thank you. Commission members with comments on the application. Anyone? I guess just to voice my opinion on what we're talking about as far as existing, I guess I would tend to agree with the applicant that with other types of developments, we don't have that in there. And I think as our town planner said, it just becomes a two-step process. I know at one point in time, going back many years, when we were very concerned about trees, and we get an application and an applicant would want to remove some trees, and we may have been very resistant toward that. And then, the applicants finally realized, well, before I come in with my application, I'll cut the trees down. Yeah. So I think that there is enough control as far as filling in that the Wetlands Commission has with respect to this. And again, I think as you pointed out, it just makes it a two-step process. So that being said,
the only question I have, Casey, is if this were to become effective, how much time between now and its effective date?
That is up to you. Typically, we will run the legal notice on Friday, and the appeal period will end 15 days from then. You can make it effective sooner. You could make it effective tomorrow. I usually recommend you make it effective on Friday because that's when we'll file it on the land records, and then they just know that the 15-day appeal period is at their own risk. But you'll be going through another application at that point anyhow. Yeah.
2 more applications, yes.
Thank you.
I would say Friday.
Friday the 13th.
Friday, yeah.
okay, again, this is a public hearing. Any members of the public like to speak on the application, please come forward, name and address. Seeing none, I assume, Mr. Giuliano, you have no further comments before we look to close the public hearing?
I think I've said enough.
Any commission members with any final comments? Casey, any final comments? Okay, at this point in time, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we close public hearing for zoning text amendment J. Richello, Section 4.25, Housing Opportunity District General, application 504-16.
We have a motion to close the public hearing. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons, voting beginning with Mrs. Morgenstein, please.
Yes.
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 And yes, and at this point in time, I'd entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for approval for a zoning text amendment for Richello to create generally applicable housing opportunity district that allows for multifamily development when at least 30% of the units are designated affordable units, as proposed in language titled Proposed Amendment to Wallingford Zoning Regulations, New Section 4.25, Housing Opportunity District General, dated May 2016, updated to January 2017, to be effective on January 13, 2017, because this provides for better clarification of the Housing Opportunity District General HOD-G, subject to page 2, section 4.1 or 4.25.a, rental should be struck, and page 6, section 4.25e.3, lease should be struck.
Do we have a motion on the application? Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons, voting beginning with Mrs. Morgenstein, please.
Yes.
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 And yes, application's been approved. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Our next item is a continuation of a public hearing for zoning text amendment put forward by the Planning and Zoning Commission for section 4.5.D.3, the CA 6 zone parking. And again, Mr. Menard, if you note all additional correspondence for the record.
We have a proposed parking changes dated 1/4/2017. We have another proposal dated 1/4/17, and we have a Office of the Mayor's letter dated January 3rd, 2017. And that is correspondence, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Menard. And again, Casey, if you'd please continue on this where we left off from our last meeting.
Sure. So at the last meeting, when you opened the public hearing, I think we had a very informative discussion. I think it was a very productive discussion, and we received a lot of input from members of the public as well as the commission. Based on that discussion, I have made a few changes. Also, based on my conversations with Attorney Small, I made a few changes. So to review those, on page 1, the only thing is I changed the start date to January 1st, 2017, since we're already past it. It's just a closer date. On page 4, I made a few changes based on the previous discussion, and I'm sure the commission will want to have some further discussion about this. This is in regard to one of the options for reducing the amount of parking that you construct, the fees in lieu of parking spaces. I modified the 10% maximum you could use you could do that for to 20%. Speaking with Attorney Small, modified the language slightly so that because there was some concern about forming the fund and how that would occur, and Attorney Small did seem to feel that, without speaking for her, that the commission would have some discretion about that, and that if this is approved by the commission, the fund would be formed. But I wanted the language to make sure to sort of cover if it wasn't, if there was no fund, then you wouldn't be able to use the fee in lieu of parking section, basically. So if we for some reason can't form the fund, you wouldn't be able to use that section. And then finally, I modified the fee proposal to $4,500, and part of that was based on the conversation that we had, and part of that was based on two other pieces of information. One is the national average is about $4,000 for construction of a parking space, and more than that, I spoke with our public works director and sort of did the math in terms of how much it costs the town to construct a parking space, and then I did a very rough average in terms of the value of the assessed value of the land on several properties in the town center area by square foot, and then accounted for the square footage for the space. And then I accounted for I accounted for 2 repavements over time and for labor. So land, labor, and construction costs, and that includes long-term maintenance and construction. And I came out with $4,432. So I think that's about consistent. On the next page, page 5, in terms of the section about parking made available to the general public, I worked with Attorney Small on sort of finalizing some of this language in order to make sure that it was something that was workable. Essentially, the way that the language is now written, the the way the language is written, there would be an agreement acceptable to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So it's less specific in terms of what the form of the agreement would be in making the parking available to the public. The applicant would propose something and then the commission would decide if that's appropriate. And then they would undergo whatever other agreements were necessary or not with the town. So it could be as simple as somebody just designating their parking as public parking. It could be a lease agreement with the town. It would really depend on the particulars of the situation. I also added in a little more language specifying what the considerations would be under that situation. So what, in considering a special permit for that, what the commission might consider, such as proximity of the proposed public spaces to other public parking, proximity to the buildings, the number of spaces. So we don't want one space here and then one space on the kind of things like that. So I added some specifics in terms of those considerations. And then on page 7, I modified the language a bit in terms of the landscaping. Most of it was just sort of clarifying language. And then I did, as previously discussed, allow for a reduction in the internal landscaping requirement, because I think there was an acknowledgement that in the town center, we need to use as much parking as we can, and that it was acceptable to reduce that the landscaping requirements don't need to be the same as they are for a very large parking lot in other parts of town. And that the parking is always going to be designed, it's required to be behind the building. And in situations where it's grandfathered and it's not, there are additional landscaping requirements. So those are the changes that I made in a nutshell. From our discussion last month, I think probably the biggest points left to talk about are the alternatives, specifically the fees in lieu of parking and the provision of parking, of making parking available to the general public. I have found some examples since then of towns that do things similar to making the parking available to the general public. I also reached out again to the listserv in regards to what towns have the fees in lieu of parking. I did not get a lot of responses, but I did on the listserv, but I did some additional research and I did come up with several additional towns, which was a little bit more encouraging. I think there is also sort of the underlying question. There was a recommendation made in our plan of development that the implementation committee and that the Planning and Zoning Commission in particular look at a downtown parking plan, and that would typically, when there's a parking plan or when there is a fund, a lot of times it's managed by some sort of parking authority or something of that nature. So there is sort of that side conversation that may be appropriate to have, or at least consider in sort of discussing this regulation. But I think that you could move either way with this, and then we could pursue that also. The last thing I would just say is, well, two things. I do think we've done a lot of work on this, and I think it's evolved very nicely. But I do think there was also the mention of the potential for going to zero parking. So some of the commissioners may want to discuss that further. That is not my recommendation, but I understand what the thought on that is. I think that for me to go to the zero parking, I think that short of having a parking plan, we do need property owners and developers to provide some parking on their parking lots, or somehow account for their parking requirements, because we as a town don't have that type of parking plan in place at this time. but that's probably something that the commission wants to discuss a little further. I just wanted to try to touch on all the points from last time. And I think and the last thing I'll say is you could move forward tonight with portions of this. So if you want to, if there's something that you don't like or you're not ready to move on, you do, I think most of this kind of can stand on its own. So if you wanted to move forward with parts of it and revisit other parts later, we could also do that.
Thank you. I guess just some general comments. I think over the last, 6 months or case, I'm not sure how long, when we started this, that we've had numerous workshops on this. We've had, one public hearing already. This is a continuation of that public hearing. I know we've had a fairly robust discussion about even with the zero parking at the last meeting. Certainly if people want to continue to talk about that, but I think we made a decision at the last meeting that we were going to look to move forward, or at least to discuss the regulations, and the zero parking was something that at least the majority of the commissioners indicated they weren't interested. If people want to continue to discuss that, certainly that's something that can be done, but the idea of looking at this and perhaps picking and choosing on this, I've looked at it, and from my perspective, with some of the changes that have been made here, I feel very comfortable. There are some items, still in my mind, and I'd like to have discussion with commission members, and that's with the, with the reduction, being allowed to reduce the number of parking spaces, and then having, the fee, whether that's, I'm certainly in favor of the 20% reduction. As far as the $4,500 fee, in my mind, I still think that may be a little bit too high, but those are my general comments. Commission members that would like to make comments before we go out to the public. Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a couple of questions for the town planner before I make comments. On the revisions that you talked about on attachment 4A, on page 1 under 4.5B, at the very bottom, you changed the date January 1st, 2017, only in the first reference to that paragraph. Is there a reason why the other ones were left 2016?
No, it should be, they all should be.
It's all reflected January 1 of this year?
Okay. I just figured we'd bring it to as close of a date to now as we could.
Okay, thank you. And then the other question, again through you, Mr. Chairman, the memo that was on the table this evening from the Office of the Mayor, was this requested or just arrived unsolicited?
I'm sorry, I meant to mention that. This is in regard to I guess the decision or pursuit of expanding the parking area on the Wooding parking lot. This is something that I did have a conversation with the mayor about sort of early on when we were having conversations about the impact of the Wooding piece and the potential use of the Wooding piece on your parking, on your potential changes to the parking requirements. So it appears that there has been, that the mayor's office has and the town engineer's office have made the determination to move forward with turning part of the grassed area into parking, similar to the rest of the parking lot. I did not ask for this memo, but I believe it was, it may have been requested by a member of the public. But it is, I do think it's a positive that, I think we want to, again, take advantage of as much available parking as there is. I think that the question for the commission was maybe the status or establishment of the permanence of the lot as a whole.
Right. I guess, again, through you, Mr. Chair, the question, I think it's very encouraging to see this from the Office of the Mayor, with today's date. Do we know how many potential spots would be in the so-called open grass field?
I don't. I know the town engineer is working on a plan, and we talked about the approval process for that, but I don't know what he's come up with so far.
Okay. Then, Mr. Chairman, I guess I would probably echo what you said and offer my congratulations to you and the town planner. This has been a very long process as far as the zoning text amendment, and there's been lots of meetings and workshops. I would tell you I'm in favor of everything that we're proposing, specifically from the legal notice. It essentially reduces overall parking requirements downtown, allows interchanging of permitted uses within existing buildings. It does provide for shared parking, fees in lieu of parking, provisions for parking for publicly available. I think all of it is good. I have 2 or 3 comments that I would not want to disappoint you, Mr. Chairman. Specifically, I would like to again state for the record, I do think Wallingford has a quantity of parking. We don't have quality, but I think we've acknowledged it through numerous workshops. The quality is something that the town has to address. This commission's charge is the requirement of the parking specifically. So I do think that there is ample parking, and I think, excuse me, there is parking. I shouldn't use the word ample. But again, you have to hunt and find it, and you know, might have to walk a little. I would concur with your opinion on the 4,500. I think I would be, you know, I've not been in favor of the fee because of the fact that other people have used the vehicle available to them by way of the ZBA requesting a variance. So but I do like the idea of capturing something so we can kind of see what happens. I think the 4,500 is high, and Casey, I wouldn't challenge you, but if I were to ask the town how many parking spots they put in, it's very hard because whatever's been put in is temporary. You know, even the memo from the mayor refers to the fact they're going to use millings from highway projects. I mean, so nothing appears to be permanent, and you know, the town needs a permanent plan for downtown parking. So I would be in favor of trying to capture some amount of fee in lieu of, if that's what an applicant were to propose. I think 4,500 is a lot. You know, unless we had commitment that the town was building a garage and that was we determined the spot to be. I don't know what's a good number, you know, and the reason I say that is I'm not the engineer, but I think something might make sense. I don't know if through you, Mr. Chair, if we could have a commission of maybe 1,500 or 2,000. I'm trying to think of the other variances that have been granted, because if the variance door is left open, I'm not sure how we would get the funds. And I think I do like the provision that the town planner add, and she made it in her comments following her conversation with the town attorney. The funds could only be used for parking in this area. You know, but I could envision forward the funds were received for an uptown project, and now they're being used for something downtown. I mean, so you have the uptown, downtown. I mean, you know, we're not going to win everything, but I do think some fee would be better than no fee, but I don't know what the right number is, but I think 45 is high. And I'd be in favor of, if we cut it right in half, it'd be 2250. I don't know if there'd be support to go lower, but those are my comments at this time.
Thank you. Other commission members? Yes, Mr. Matarazzo.
I would support Mr. Fitzsimmons on pretty much all his comments. I think the fee is a little high. I think we'd have to worry that if Wallingford starts taking in substantial monies in lieu of, that a permanent parking resolution may not present itself. So.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Casey?
Just to comment in terms of the fee, just doing rough math, if I take out the construction and maintenance costs that I added in and the future maintenance and just do the cost of land and the pure materials and cost of materials, so that'd be curb, painting, and asphalt, and land is the biggest cost per space, it comes out to about $2,680, just as a second point of reference if you wanted to go lower.
Thank you. And before I go off to the public, I'll just follow up on Mr. Fitzsimmons' comments just concerning the expansion of the temporary lot. I guess when I'm looking at this, I kind of look at it and say I've kind of seen this movie before. I know the ending. It doesn't end well. Given the fact that we have the temporary lot, even for one of our major events in town, our Celebrate Wallingford, we weren't able to even have the lot restriped. So I'm looking at while we may be expanding a lot, it's still a temporary lot, and to me, it just doesn't address a permanent situation, as I think as Mr. Fitzsimmons said, that what we need is really an overall permanent plan. And, I think that these regulations and taking these regulations, it's a step, and as you'd mentioned, Casey, as part of our plan of conservation and development, looking to, when we have our implementation committee, looking to hopefully go forward and trying to put together, somewhere down the line, a more cohesive parking plan. As far as the amount of the fee, I could go for a fee for $2,000, and if someone wanted to go a little higher than that, that's fine. But to me, I think that's reasonable. But that being said, this is a continuation of our public hearing. Members of the commission would like, members of the public that would like to speak on the application, name and address.
Jack McGuire, 373 Center Street, Wallingford. I have to admit that I'm the person who asked the mayor to send that letter, but I haven't seen it. So would you be kind enough to read that out loud, the memo from the mayor?
Sure. It says, as per telephone conversation, it's our intention to provide additional parking for public purposes on the east side of Wallace Avenue on the Kaplan Wooding property. I think it's really only the Wooding property, though. The area is currently an open grass field. The Public Works would do construction in an effort to reduce stormwater runoff due to issues of cost. We are planning to use millings from highway projects. If you have any questions, please let me know. William W. Dickinson, Mayor.
Thank you. And I have to commend the mayor on doing this, because he looks like he's trying to move forward in this area of parking in Wallingford that we've been talking about for many years, and I do commend him on that. Now, Mr. DiNatale and I went over with the Planning and Zoning and the Public Works Department 3 weeks ago to look at the property over there, listen to what they were talking about, and hear what they have to say about bringing this additional parking in line in the uptown area where it is definitely needed. It sounds very positive. I'm very positive about the whole thing, and again, as I say, I commend the mayor for stepping ahead. I don't worry about the temporary part of this thing. It's a step in the right direction, and if we go this far, maybe in another couple of years, maybe 5 years, who knows, maybe 10 years, it becomes a permanent parking lot. But it's certainly a step in the right direction. The one thing I wish that the Planning and Zoning had done was to indicate the number of parking places that we could expect to get from this new expansion. I stepped it off myself, and I fully think that we can get at least 40 to 50 additional parking places in this area. That's a tremendous input in this area. Because of that, and because of the discussions that we've had about parking in the area, where a lot of us have said, look, if the town were to do something in the uptown area, maybe it would be conceivable if we went to the zero parking. I think now is the time to act. The zero parking is definitely possible. The town is ready to do this. It's a step in the right direction, and I urge all of you to go along with this. I want to just read some things for you about the uptown area and why parking is a problem. And I'm going to read to you some of the dates of properties in the uptown area, starting with my own property, which happens to be the oldest, a piece of property on 373 Center Street, owned by myself and Attorney Farrell, built in 1800. The first Congregational Church, 1868. The TD Bank building, again, a building that I own, 1887. Gallagher Travel, 1890. Fishbein Insurance Agency, 1890. The Library, 1899. Kaplan's Market, 1900. The Tavern on Main, 1908. The Masonic Building, 1911. The Stimson Pharmacy Building, 1930. And Moran's Drugstore, the corner building on Center and Main, 1932. Everything in the uptown of Wallingford was built over 100 years ago. There was no parking in this area. That's why there's a problem, and that's why bringing 40 or 50 more spaces in line is a tremendous step in the right direction. I can only tell you this. I grew up at 43 North Whittlesey Avenue in Wallingford. That's where I grew up. 43 North Hilsey Avenue is the backyard to the current Wells Fargo Bank. That was my backyard. That was my playground. There was no parking lot behind what was then the George, you know, the inn that was there at that time. There was nothing behind the library. That was all sumac and poison ivy. There was nothing behind what was then Dickerman's Hardware except a couple of sheds back there for a couple of cars. That was it. And then behind the TD Bank building, that was Wilkinson's Theater. That's where I spent every Saturday and Sunday of my life, going to the theater. There was no parking in that whole area. I thoroughly encourage you, please, please, go with the zero parking. That's what we need. I commend the efforts of you, Casey, and everybody who's worked on this with all the other suggestions that you've made, but I really feel that the zero parking is the best way for us to go here in Wallingford. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members from the public? Yes, gentleman in the back. Anyone else that would like to speak on the application, please raise your hand so we have an idea. I don't want to limit it to this last gentleman, but apparently that will be the case.
I look forward to the day that John Walworth, 28 Laurelwood Drive, would not be called the gentleman in the back, but just, John, get up here.
All right, John, get up here.
I applaud the responses that I've heard tonight from the commission and the work, in fact, that you do for the town as a volunteer. I also applaud the hours of work that Casey has put in, technically researching and trying to give you folks backup in order to move ahead. But I'm afraid that if we did look at zero, with all due respects to Mr. McGuire, if we do look at zero, we may throw out the baby with the bathwater. We may go back and then have another public information meeting, maybe somebody else would object, and have another way they would want to pursue this. A compromise position would be to look at perhaps some variation of zero when you look at the entire regulation for CA6. Maybe then there's enough time to look at that appropriately, but folks, Brantford does not have zero requirement downtown. Brantford has regulations that are similar in some aspects to what we have. So I don't want to be dissuaded by that. I'd like the ship to move ahead. I think you can move confidently in approval of the regulation as it's presented tonight with confidence and have some time in the future maybe to look at other alternatives. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir. Excuse me. Thank you, John. Anyone else? At this point in time, then I'll bring it back to the commission. Any final comments, any commission members? Yes, Mrs. Morgenstein.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. So, well, a lot of us are commending this letter, and we're going to get some more parking temporary, it would seem, with the use of millings. Do we really think that we can ask the going rate for a parking space that's being your numbers that you've come up with in other towns of our developers who want to have in lieu of, if we do that in lieu of parking situation, can we ask them to pay a full going rate when what we're making our parking lot out of is millings and it's simply temporary?
The fee is based on 2-inch thick compacted asphalt, so it's sort of an in between. You guys obviously can establish whatever fee you think is appropriate, but I do think nobody has to do this. So there is a benefit to not having to provide a parking space in that you also get to put more building there, which is good for everybody. But point taken.
Yeah, my point being, it would be really nice to see us make a determination that the town can invest in real parking structures.
Thank you. Other commission members? Mr. Fitzsimmons.
Mr. Chairman, I do not disagree with both members of the public who spoke. They've been here consistently. I think I'm in favor of moving forward this evening, but I think an item on our agenda later on talks about the implementation of the town's plan of conservation development. One of the findings there is the idea of, pulling various groups together in the town to look at downtown parking again. So this is a good first step, as you indicated, Mr. Chair. I would agree. I would propose that we set the fee at $2,000 at this point, just to keep this moving. And obviously, as we all know in the commission, and the members of the public, these regulations are always subject to change. But I think this is a definite positive move. It definitely addresses what we've been talking about, seems like, since last winter, and I think it'd be a very positive thing. The other piece I'd mention, just for the commission, because I didn't discuss it, because other users have requested a variance in the past to get the waiver. I don't want to get so hung up on the fee, but I did find out, talking with others, between December meeting and this meeting, in some towns, the cost of a variance could be tied to the request of a parking space waiver. For example, if you're requesting a variance to forgive your parking requirement and the town has imposed a fee, in some towns they've said if you get the variance, you still have to pay the fee. So it is an option that we're certainly not part of this proposal, but that's other towns have done. But those towns that have a parking authority with a plan to aggressively pursue town-funded parking by way of, but I don't think we're there. So I could support a $2,000 fee initially and hopefully move forward.
Good. Thank you, Ms. Fitzsimmons. I guess just to get a general consensus from the from the members of the commission. Again, at our last time I think the two key components was the 20% on the 2,000. I'd just like to get people's consensus on that, as far as the 20% reduction as well as the 2,000 fee. How people feel comfortable with that. I believe Mr. Fitzsimmons, you've already spoken. Does anyone disagree with that? Okay. That being said, Casey, before I just close the public hearing, do you have any final comments that you would like to make?
No, I think this has been a very productive process, and I think it's definitely a step in the right direction towards what we're trying to make happen in the town center, and I think this will be helpful in our next step in that process.
Okay, good. And again, I'd just like to thank you on behalf of the commission for all the time and effort that you've put into this, for doing the additional research, or the initial research and then the additional research, and for your time and effort. And then also Mr. DiNatale was one of the individuals who came forward to propose that we look at that, and I'd like to thank him for approaching the commission also, for having us to look at that. That being said, I'd entertain a motion to close our public hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to close the public hearing for zoning text amendment, section 4.5.D.3, CA 6 zone parking, application 901-16.
I have a motion to close the public hearing. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons, voting beginning with Mrs. Morgenstein.
Yes.
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 And yes, at this point in time, I'd entertain a motion on the application.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve a zoning text amendment for the Wallingford Planning and Zoning Commission to significantly modify the parking requirements in the CA6 zoning district, including but not limited to reducing overall parking requirements and providing alternatives for complying with minimum parking requirements as proposed in language titled Proposed Parking Changes CA6 Zone, updated to January 4, 2007, because this will clarify regulations for the CA6 zone parking changes, subject to 4.5.D.3.B, January 1, 2016 should be January 1, 2017 throughout, and 4.5.D.3.E.II.B, change 4,500 to 2,000.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have a motion on the application. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons, voting beginning with Mrs. Morgenstein.
Yes.
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 And yes. Again, thank you very much, Casey. Moving on, new business, it's a site plan, 768 square foot accessory apartment for Raffone at 1092 Clintonville Road. If the applicant would please come forward to begin preparing for his or her presentation. And Mr. Menard, if you would please note all correspondence for the record.
Interdepartmental referral from the senior engineer dated January 9, 2017. We have interdepartmental referral received December 14, 2016. Casey, do you happen to know who that is?
I believe it's the fire marshal.
He usually puts fire marshal on there. Okay, all righty.
I will find out and
I'll
correct
believe
it.
you.
Okay.
Okay. And we have interdepartmental referral from the Chiefs Sanitarium, January 9, 2017.
Wow.
And we have an interdepartmental referral dated January 9, 2017 from the town engineer. And that is correspondence, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Menard. Again, if the applicant would please introduce himself and begin his presentation.
Good evening, Board. My name is Justin Raffone, and this is my wife, Melissa Raffone. We are currently residents at 22 Simpson Avenue, Wallingford. We are building a new home, 1092 Clintonville Road. It's directly across the street from St. Francis Cabrini Church. And we are requesting approval on an in-law accessory apartment for my wife's parents to move in with us with the new home. And just looking forward to proceeding with that. We had made some revisions to the footprint of the in-law apartment. I have labeled on the plan I handed you guys the in-law kitchen, in-law den, in-law bedroom, and a common family living area that we're going to share. And that had reduced the square footage, Casey, down to about 675 square feet. When Casey had originally done the calculation, I had neglected to include the actual footprint, so my initial calculation was 768, but it was actually 903, I believe, Casey, right?
That's what I got. Yeah.
Okay. So we had revised the layout and added some common area, and that common area space reduced it by 233 square feet approximately. So that's...
So again, the actual square footage now is, just if you please repeat yourself, is...
Yeah, the actual square footage of the in-law specifically is 675 square feet approximately. And that would be the in-law kitchen, the in-law den, the in-law bedroom, the bathroom, and the closets.
Okay. Casey, you've had an opportunity to look at these plans prior to this evening, is that correct?
Yep.
Any comments that you may have?
No, I would just point out to you, as the applicant indicated, originally that what now shows on the plans as the common family living area, that had been the kitchen, but they swapped it. The issue was gross floor area versus net floor area, the outside walls. We run into that sometimes. Sometimes people don't include that. So as long as you're comfortable with the living areas shown on there as being common area, which it does have doors connecting to both spaces, everything else is compliant.
Okay. Commission members, any questions on the plans?
When was this plan updated? So
I actually made the revisions to this plan a couple days ago. I had them copied tonight.
Throw me a date.
Just give us
So the date would be the 7th. What's the day?
Sounds good to me.
Today's the 9th.
Today's the 9th.
January 7th?
January 7th,
Snowstorm.
2017.
We worked on the snowstorm.
You can reference it as received at the January 9th meeting and just note that on there.
It actually worked out better, Casey. My mother-in-law was happier with the new layout, so
Oh,
it worked
good.
out for the best.
You like
We
that.
revised
Keep
it.
the mother-in-law happy.
Yeah.
Here you go.
To answer that though, just more of a question than anything else, the bathroom looks kind of small for an in-law apartment, just being in the line of business I'm in.
My mother-in-law loves counter space and closet space, so she was okay with that. As long as it's got a full-size tub, she's okay.
Okay.
She's had a lot of input.
This is not a public hearing, but if there's any members of the public who'd like to speak on the application, we do give people the opportunity. Seeing none, I guess I'll bring it back to the commission for any final comments or the applicant prior to a motion on the application. Seeing none from either party, I'd entertain a motion on the application.
I'm working on it.
Just give us a moment.
Just working on it. I know you're throwing me under pressure now. Hey, you told me we were going to be out of here earlier than this, so. All right, here we go.
Kick off.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve a site plan for Raphone to construct a approximately 675 square foot accessory apartment as part of a new house at 1092 Clintonville Road, as shown on plans entitled Septic System Plan Raphone Residence, 1092 Clintonville Road, Wallingford, Connecticut, dated July 28, 2016, updated to January 7th, 2017, subject to water and sewer memo dated December 12, 2016, and health department memo dated December 9th, 2016. And final inspection of the zoning enforcement officer.
We have a motion on the application. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Fitzsimmons. Voting beginning with Mrs. Morgenstein.
Yes.
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 Yes, the application's been approved. Have a good evening. Thank you. Okay, moving on. Item number 7, it's a fee waiver and reimbursement request for a site plan driveway expansion for A. Barbarino at 11 Pondside Drive. Casey? I guess Mr. Barbarino's here if you'd like to, Alan? We have your item here. I don't know if you'd like to come forward and discuss it.
Alan Barbarino, 11 Pondside Drive. I think the letter speaks for itself.
Alan, if you pull the microphone a little bit closer to you so they can pick up your voice, please.
So Alan Barbarino, 11 Pondside Drive. So I basically think the letter speaks for itself. I mean, I put in an application for $250. It was rejected by the association. Said I could make the application. Then the association's attorney sends a letter to Casey saying to withdraw the application. It never got heard. So I don't think that there was any cost incurred by the town of Wallingford with regards to that. So I respectfully ask that my $250 be returned.
Thank you. Casey, I know you had some comments on this. If you'd like to enlighten us on your thoughts, please.
Yes. We did go through the review process for this application, and I did have several conversations over the years with Mr. Barbarino about not applying until the association had a conversation about it, because as you all know, your OSPRD regulations indicate that modifications should only be made for the development as a cohesive development. So that's what I always encourage when these types of applications are being considered. So I don't, I have the file here, and we did go through a review process, and I'm just, typically I don't object to fee waivers, but I just think in this case it was also withdrawn in April of 2016, so I don't really feel comfortable supporting the waiver of this application fee, but it is at your discretion.
Sure. Commission members with their thoughts? I guess no other commission members. I guess I would, concur with our town planner. Again, now, I'm not sure what Mr. Barlow, your conversations were with the, with the homeowners association, but I mean, at the end of the day, perhaps your recourse is to go back to the homeowners association and ask for, reimbursement if, if they've indicated to you one thing and then came back with with another answer. Because again, I believe our town planner, had indicated that you need the approval of the homeowners association to go forward with that. And I think as she's indicated, she spent time on this. So we're going to leave it. Those are my comments. We're not it's not a back and forth. I'm asking other commission members for, for their comments.
Did have a signed application by the homeowners association.
Well, again, if they've, I think then your recourse is with them. Other commission members that would like to comment?
Yeah, I concur that our time is money.
Anyone else? I guess at this point in time, I would take a vote as far as, I guess that would be the appropriate thing, Casey. If there's if there's any desire from this commission to refund the application fee.
No.
Yeah, well, if you would just make I think that'd probably be more appropriate.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we deny fee waiver and reimbursement request for site plan driveway expansion A Barberino 11 Pondside Drive, application 209-16.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Morgenstein, voting beginning with Mrs. Morgenstein.
No. Or no is don't refund, correct?
If you're...
Oh.
The motion is to deny.
Yes.
So yes is deny, sorry, yes.
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 And yes. Moving on, Casey, our next thing is a fee waiver request for Sunwood Development Corporation at 423 Center Street.
Yes.
Do we have anyone here from the...
I don't believe there's anyone here, but I did have a conversation, I did discuss this with them. Essentially, it's the house on the corner of South Elm and Center Street. You may have noticed if you go by there that they're doing some work on it. There was an existing porch in the front, and there was also one in the back. And as you know, once you remove something that's non-conforming, you lose any claim to a grandfathering. So they removed it with the intention of replacing it, but we sort of didn't have a conversation about it. So at this point, what they're looking for is for the deck that they want to put on the back, if it's not covered, it doesn't require a survey, so that's not an issue. But the porch in the front is going to be a porch. It is covered, and your porches do require a survey in order to demonstrate compliance with the zoning regulations. So they are requesting a waiver. Their indication is that it's actually going to be slightly smaller than the previous porch was. They did indicate that they located a monument on the corner of Center and South Elm, and that they would be exceeding the setbacks pretty significantly.
What is the width on this porch show?
Those porch will
That's how I
be-
read it.
It's 6 feet 6 inches, or I'm sorry, 6 feet in depth.
Right.
The width is, I believe, all the way across the house.
Okay.
And they're indicating that they'll be 21 feet from south. No, they'll be 25 feet from South Elm and 19.6 from Center Street.
Casey, it says that the memo says that there's enclosed photos and the floor plans. I didn't see any.
Yeah, I don't see that either.
But once you tear it down, don't you have to?
That's what I'm that's what I'm thinking. Casey, just correct me if I'm wrong. The porch that was on there was non-conforming, is that correct?
We don't know.
Oh, so we don't.
According to their information, it wouldn't have been. But we don't know because there's no survey. So if the porch had never been, and their representation is that they don't need a variance, that it's not a non-conformity.
I guess you're speaking for the applicant, and I think it would be more beneficial if the applicant were here to explain the situation, because I think that puts you into a situation where you're explaining something for the applicant that I think you're kind of acting as a spokesperson, and I'm sure you don't necessarily feel totally comfortable with that, and I just think that it's something that the applicant should be here to explain this to us, because I think there's probably some other commission members that have additional questions, and it would be unfair to have you in a position where you need to look to respond and try to figure it out.
Okay, I do just want to give you the opportunity to look at this, because I think these attachments, which I'm not sure why they didn't get included, but are somewhat enlightening.
I said to Gina, I didn't get 2 double-sided copies in my package. I was one of the things I'm like, I don't know how to do it. Oh, creepy. So he's proposing this. Taking out the second floor.
Okay, Casey, again, it's my feeling that I'd like to have the applicant here to explain the application in a better manner. I mean, obviously, they've known that it's on our agenda.
Right.
And I think normally when we have, survey waivers or whatever, we do have the applicant here to explain it.
Okay.
So I think if you would notify the applicant that this will be on our meeting for next month, and encourage him or his representative to come to the meeting. Now, do we need any motion to continue this?
No.
No? Okay. All right, moving on. Bond releases and reductions. If you take us through really the rest of our agenda.
Yes. Okay. For Sunwood, item number 9, 195 Chimney Hill Road, I'm still waiting for some department reviews, so that's not ready yet. 320 Barnes Road, that is ready for bond release, item number 10.
Okay, do we have a motion on the bond release?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we release the bond for site plan, was it Borghese Builders, Rowan Technologies, 320 Barnes Road, application 211-13.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, Casey, moving on to our discussion items.
Okay, this is, it probably didn't need to be on here this way, but discussion and possible scheduling of a public hearing for 2 items. One is your LED sign moratorium, or a potential LED sign moratorium, and the other is for the removal of educational, religious, and philanthropic uses as permitted uses in the IX and I5 zones. Those are both in your receipts tonight to be scheduled for public hearing for next month. Those both have been previously discussed, but I just wanted to note for you, I suppose, that they're
Casey,
on your receipts list.
Does anyone have that on their receipts? I don't have that.
Oh, wait.
Or we do?
Yes. Oh, yes. Sorry.
I do.
Good?
Yes, I think we're good. We're good. Thank you. So we have that, and what you're asking for us is, as far as when we like to schedule this?
Yeah, it's in your receipt, so presumably you would
We'd have
schedule it for next month,
I
but,
would think that that would be appropriate.
okay.
Hopefully, does anyone disagree with that, scheduling it,
Perfect.
for next month?
Yeah, actually, all of your receipts for next month are town
Have all of those,
applications.
that has the beekeeping and all of that in
Yep,
there?
yep, those are all on.
I apologize, I did not have that.
That's okay. Okay, moving on, your POCD Implementation Committee meeting. I want to reach out to the Implementation Committee, but first I wanted to try to narrow down the dates with you a little bit since there will be a lot of people involved in that first meeting. I'd like to recommend that we consider the week of January 23rd.
The 23rd doesn't work for me, I'll be out of town the
Okay.
whole week.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry.
How about,
If you give everybody just a chance to pull out the calendars.
oh, sorry,
Casey.
okay.
You're still in January, right?
Yeah, she was looking at the week of the 23rd, but that doesn't work for me.
No, you gotta be here. I got my calendar.
Bless you. And again.
Two.
The week of, I guess I'm looking at maybe the week of, the 30th.
The week of January 30th?
Yeah, or February 6th.
Okay.
I'm not sure, how do people feel about those weeks?
I like the 6th better.
Mr. Fitzsimmons likes the 6th.
I'll be away on the 6th. But
How about the 30th?
30th, I'm here.
Last Monday I'm good. I'm good the 30th.
How does everything, the week of the 30th, how does that look for everyone?
So are we talking specifically the 30th?
Well, I just wanted,
Well, because the end of the week is no good, but
yeah, how was Monday the 30th? Does that work for everyone?
I'm green for that.
Works for
That work?
me.
Let's shoot for that, Casey.
All right.
January 30th.
If that doesn't work for the majority of the implementation committee member or the other implementation committee members, then I'll give you some backups.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, good.
And along those lines, I have also provided you with, this is sort of the planning and zoning portion of the action agenda. The version that I've given you, so this cuts out from the action agenda the things where either the commission or the planning department are the sort of lead agencies for that particular item. And I have sort of gone through it, and I think that there are some things that we are working on, and that actually we have accomplished in relation to some of these recommendations, particularly in relation to affordable housing, which is one of the recommendations. We are working to a lot of things. We're working towards support and maximize benefits of the New Haven, Hartford, Springfield commuter rail line. We're starting to have and make some movement forward with the town center zoning and with the TOD discussions and the I-X and I-5 discussions. So I sorted this, the one that I gave you, I sorted it first on the timeline, sort of whether it's something that's supposed to occur soon, immediate, soon, midterm, or further out, and then within each of those time frames, what priority they were. So highest to lowest per time frame. And I actually was happy to see that for several of these things we are on track. I am behind in scheduling the implementation committee meetings, so I think it's good that we'll be getting that off the ground. So what I wanted to do was give you the opportunity to sort of look at this and think about how you might want to move forward in terms of some of these, accomplishing some of these items. From my perspective, I think that the three major sort of groupings of items moving forward are probably, and they're sort of covered in different items, but on the second page, the first item, reduce stormwater runoff impacts of development. That is something that, as a result of the state MS4 permitting requirements changing, we will be required to update our stormwater regulations in order to comply with our new MS4 permit. So that is something that we've been talking about internally as staff, so that's something that you can expect relatively soon moving down the pike, and I do think that's important. So we'll be talking about adding in some low impact development and modifying our stormwater requirements. And then the other two, I think, big things that we've been talking about are the town center and TOD area and the IX and I-5 areas. So you do have that one modification scheduled for public hearing now for next month in the IX and I-5, and you just approved some changes to your town center parking, so we're making some steps. I would like to next tackle looking at the TOD and the town center zones, but I don't want to lose sight of the IX and I-5, so sort of, I think my recommendation, and I, would welcome everybody to think about this, and maybe we can talk about it next month, but is to sort of focus on developing new zoning for the CA6 and the TOD area, which is going to be quite involved, I think, but I think will be a very important thing for the town. But perhaps have some conversations in the background about some of the most significant and straightforward changes that we can maybe make to the I-5 and the IX. So some of the changes you can make to the I-5 and IX, I think, can be pretty simple. One of the big things is the open space requirements. So that's something that I think we can run on somewhat of a parallel track.
Okay. If you could, Casey, just those items that you talked about, if you could put really an outline for us.
Sure.
If you could put that in our, and perhaps, put that out before our next meeting, if you can send that out to the commission, members, so then we can look at that and then perhaps have, some discussion of a plan of direction at our next meeting. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, and if there are things that other people see as different priorities, we should talk about that.
Yeah, but again, if you could outline that for us, that would be certainly beneficial.
Sure.
All right, moving on.
Okay, administrative approvals. You had the arts and crafts change at 172 Center Street, and the brewery that you had previously discussed, brewery and tasting room and tavern at 16B Center Street. ZBA decisions, everything was approved last month. I think the one of probably significance to you is item number 4. That was to allow the lowest level of the building at 50 South Main Street to be used for residential purposes. I anticipate that you will be seeing something for that property in relation to that moving forward. At the very least, that variance will require a new site plan approval, so you'll at least see something administrative.
Did you ask them to shovel the sidewalk too?
What's that?
Ask them to shovel the sidewalk. I think that's probably the only one on Main Street that isn't.
And then for this coming month, it's all 3 garages, so I don't think anything of any importance. And then finally, zoning enforcement log. Again, as always, I will turn that to you for questions.
Does anyone have any comments, questions on our zoning enforcement log? Seeing none? I think that brings us to the end of our meeting.
End of the road.
And with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second, Mr. Fitzsimmons, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, we're adjourned. Have a good evening.